came as a control tactic. So if we can't control women, we can't tell them what to do, and we can't have them be these obedient little like princess dolls that we want them to be. And women are we are not princesses.
Periods, half the world gets them, yet we're still pretending they're a secret. Why something so natural is still so awkward to talk about, and what does culture have to do with it? Thank you for joining us on a new episode of Feminist Philosophy Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Nadia Ramadan, a Canadian Egyptian single mother and a counselor for refugee children. Nadia holds a Bachelor of Psychology here from Calgary, and today we're going to be bleeding out loud together. We're going to be talking about the topic that most people don't like talking about: periods, menstruation, why it's shameful, and should it be? Thank you, Nadia, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Do you remember your first period?
I don't remember exactly. I remember a little bit of it, and I remember mostly my parents' reaction. Yes.
Mine, I have a very sad story. I think you may relate. Mine was during Ramadan, my first one, and it just so happened before iftar by like an hour and a half. So I didn't know what was happening. And then when I realized what was happening, I started crying, not because I got it, but because I know I had to repeat the day of fasting.
Yeah, that's working the whole shift except the last hour.
How did you feel when you first got your period?
So I grew up with parents who talked to us very openly about periods. They were discussed very normally, just like any other condition or anything to do with the body. So I was very familiar with it. We knew it was going to happen around the time. So I wasn't surprised. I think a lot of my friends, specifically my Arabic or Muslim friends, were surprised when they got it. I was not. I knew it was to expected. My mom helped and supported me with it. And my dad was like, congratulations. So it wasn't a taboo topic in my household, and it wasn't such a big deal. It was more like, oh wow, you've reached a milestone. Okay, and then it was same thing. Then okay, you don't need to pray or you don't need to fast or these certain like Islamic obligations. Then I just was omitted from them. So
I know you have a little boy, and so raising a little boy, talk about menstruation is very different than raising a little girl.
yes.
Because I think when you have a daughter, it's somehow it's easier to actually talk to her about this eventually when she gets to that age where it's expected to have your period. But how are you raising a little boy for him to understand what that still means? The reason I ask is because I still, even myself at this age, I tend, even when I get my period, I'm thinking I have to hide my pad in my sleeve. I have to run to the bathroom. I have to hide everything that's happening to me. Even if I'm not hiding the pad, I'm hiding the fact that I have cramps and I'm in pain. And how are you raising a little boy? And what is your advice to parents and people with boys to basically face the world of, hey, there's the other gender that has menstruation?
Yeah, so like I said, my parents were really open, so I think that trickled down into my household, just because there wasn't any kind of stigma or taboo around it. It was just a normal topic. So I grew up with it being also a normal topic. So even though my little boy, he's 12 right now, he will never get a period, but he will probably be around people who have periods. So half of the world bleeds. So I think it's important for him to at least know how it operates. You don't need to know the details, but at least to know that it exists, it happens. Because I think sometimes when little boys are not informed, it's an easy way to be grossed out or to make fun of certain girls. So I was very open and vocal with him. Again, not in a child-friendly way, but I do inform him that no, mom has her period or whoever it is. And there was one time, I think he was maybe 5. He's like, what is a period? And I was like, well, a woman bleeds once a month. I explained it very scientifically. Like, you don't need to sit down. It's not the birds and bees conversation. It's just a really regular conversation about the body and the autonomy and what happens to it. And I think when you word it that way, I think it helps the little children understand that, oh, it's not, okay, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Because I also grew up as well, not with my family, but friends and stuff would be hiding pads, hiding tampons. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, this is a natural bodily thing. This is not something that we need to be ashamed of. So I think the shame is intentional to control women. But
I know you had quite a liberal household when discussing menstruation. Did that ever clash around how menstruation was discussed culturally within our community or within your community specifically? The way they approached the conversation compared to your parents?
yeah, so absolutely. So my parents, I thought it was the norm like my household, but clearly it was not. So when I grew up, I saw that other friends. I got my first period, I believe I was in grade 7, and there was an all girls class. And I remember, and we'd also inform each other, like the girls, like, oh my God, we got our periods. So it's like, oh, and we enjoyed when we were in sync. But I remember one teacher specifically was saying that when she got her period, she thought she was going to die. She went into the bathroom. She didn't know what was happening. She saw that she was bleeding, and she was so scared. And her mom gave her a pad and said, "Here, put this on. Put this on." And she didn't know how to use it, so she put it sticky side up. And when she was telling the class this, so many little girls also raised their hands, that that was my experience too. So I recognized that, okay, my experience was not universal, that there really is a lot of shame and taboo, and that when you have your period, basically you come out when you're done your period. But any blood talk, any period talk, any talk that makes anybody else uncomfortable or anything like that, that is dealt with in private. So to me, that never made sense, because it's something that it's a universal experience. So it makes sense that I deal with it in isolation when it impacts everybody.
What's the weirdest myth or advice you've ever heard about periods in your community or upbringing?
I don't know if this is a common one that you might have heard in the Arab culture, but tampons. So tampons are a big no-no in most Arab Muslim cultures, and I heard that they break your virginity. And this is when I was like at 13 years old. I'm like, I don't understand. So it scared me for a long time from like tampons, and I think that's another part of it, is like we should be educated about what the difference between pads, tampons, all of these things. But yeah, I was told if you insert a tampon in, that you break your virginity, that it breaks your hymen, and I'm like that. Like when now it's bizarre to believe, but that was a very common misconception and rumor when I was a kid.
Yeah, it still is, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah. Why do you think menstruation is still such a taboo subject in many Eastern and immigrant communities, and even among women?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I have a theory. I think part of it is to control women, because the two topics that are most taboo to talk about are sex and periods. We exist because two people had sex and because someone had their period, or in this case, missed their period. But those are the two reasons we exist. And then for us to avoid these two topics at all costs, like the plague, to be like, no, these are done in private. No, we never discuss them. We never educate people about them. We never inform or give people the tools about it. I think it's a shame tactic. I think it's intentionally there to make women feel bad or feel ashamed of what their natural body goes through. Because if you can't, like, shame is a control tactic. So if we can't control women, we can't tell them what to do, and we can't have them be these obedient little like princess dolls that we want them to be. And women we are not princesses. We are empowering beautiful queens, and our bodies go through a multitude of phases and stages. And it's not just the blood part. There's also there's emotional parts of it. There's a whole bunch of different aspects to it that we're not informed about at all. And so, if a young girl gets her period, even older women who get their period, sometimes they're not understanding or are gaslit to believe they're crazy or they're hormonal or they're all of these things. Even the rumor and the stereotype that women are crazy, women can't be leaders because when they get their period, they go crazy. And that's not an accurate representation. Like, if a man was bleeding from his genitals, and if we reverse that for a moment, we would be a lot gentler with men. Like, if one man came to you and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't come into work today because blood is coming from my penis," we'd say, "Oh my God, okay, take the day. I'm sorry, take the day." And then if it happened again the next day, "Hey, is the bleeding done?" "No, it still continues on for 6 or 7 days or however long." "Oh, the blood got worse," or the blood. If we just reverse the situation and make it a man that is getting their period, and even if it happens on a monthly occurrence, we would still expect that man to sit down, to not do anything, to be taken care of, because he's bleeding and he's going through stuff. But with women, is like, suck it up. We all bleed. Get up, go to work, do the same things that you're supposed to do. So honestly, I really do believe it's a control tactic.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that women can't lead because they get emotional. It reminds me of that Islamic saying in النساء قليلات عقل ودين is actually translated very wrong. And I would like to take this opportunity, I'm sure you know the definition of it for real, to actually explain that هم ناقصات عقل ودين because they get their periods, which means they don't pray as much as a man during the year. And ناقصات عقل because not because they actually don't think, but because they also use their hearts. They're emotional beings, so they actually balance between mind and heart. And I wanted to really say that. We do need a good laugh today for sure through this conversation. So, what's your most hilarious or awkward period story?
I remember me and my sister had very different periods. This is not a funny story, but it's me and my sister have very different periods. She would suffer and she would be in the bathroom for a long time. She wouldn't be able to move or operate for a few days. My periods were a little bit more easygoing, so I was able to walk about and go about. So sometimes when she was in the bathroom when we were teenagers and she was in the bathroom for hours, I was like, I need to go to school. And Mom would be, she's on her period. And I would use that line, like, we all get our periods. And I realized then how I didn't come with a gentle approach. And I also didn't recognize that every woman differs in her period, right? Mine might not impact me at all. Someone might need to be hospitalized. Like, there's so many different ranges, and the assumption that we all have. So I think I was a little bit mean to my sister growing up, or to anybody who had more severe cramps. I was like, who cares? Well, you don't need to be such like, we all get our periods. And now I'm like looking back and being like, ooh, that didn't age well. And we all differ in the way we respond to our bodies doing things that are natural.
I found that mine was that now is such a good excuse to come to my mom and say, I want candy and chocolate.
Yes.
And my mom like, because I am on my period. And I'm like, I'm using that. And mine was like, mine still is like, it's a feeling of cramps. I'm painful. I often have to actually lay down. It's awful. But still, I was like, I want something sweet. And it's like, if I'm in a bad mood and everyone's like, whatever, I use it as an excuse. Yep. It was really funny for me. I still do that by the way.
Yeah, no, honestly, that reminds me, because I used to be like that with my dad specifically. My dad was very gentle, especially when we had our periods. So that's when I would be, I want ice cream, I want this, I want that, and I would use that as an excuse. And he would princess both, like princess behavior for me and my sister. So I would use that, as an excuse often.
If we could rename the time of the month, what would you boldly call it?
The red dragon. Yeah. I don't know. It just seems fierce, and the red dragon.
When I grew up, I worked somewhere, and a bunch of girls were working with me, and one time they came, and they're Arab girls, and they're like, we're on Shamandar, and I'm like, Naam. And I'm like, what's Shamandar? And they're like, our period. And I'm like, why call it Shamandar? Shamandar is beats, for those wondering. And I'm like, you just ruined beats for me. Thank you so much.
You know, it's in theme with the colors, so I understand.
For me, I honestly would just say I'm on my period. Like, it's that time. I think that's the whole point, is to boldly call it. Like,
yes,
you know, call it what it is. This is what it is. And I think we should. And I think that's the whole point of being open about the fact that this should be a normal topic. It shouldn't be so awkward. And yes, I get it. Like, I'm still an adult, even though I want to open and break the taboos. I want to open up the subject and the topic. I still find it a little bit difficult myself to sometimes say, like, why I'm not praying. My dad prays a lot. And so when it's time for prayers, he tends to just always call the family. Like, he'd remind us, like, it's time to pray. And I'd be sitting there and not moving. And my dad's like, you don't want to miss it, because it's really important to pray on time. And I sit there and I'm like, I want to tell my very cool dad that I'm on my period. And then only after I had my daughter, I finally had the guts to actually tell my dad and say, I don't have prayers right now. And he's so sweet, because he gets shy and he'll just walk away.
Yeah,
like,
no, a lot of guys dads get really awkward with it. Yeah, I can understand that. You don't want to hear about your
But I think now he learned his lesson. He just doesn't remind me it's time to pray. He's just leave her alone.
And I think that's a new thing that came out of things as well, is men and dads and brothers not asking their wives, their sisters, anybody, like, here, you're gonna pray, you're gonna fast. Like, don't just call people to prayer. Whoever's gonna come comes.
Right.
Because I think before there used to be a cultural thing, and I understand it's from good intention, but like, hey, come pray, or why isn't that girl praying? And now people are going to understand that this woman is fully operating, fully functioning, and if she is not coming to pray, there's probably a reason.
Yeah. Like many Muslim parents, my parents sent me to Islamic school, Sunday Islamic school, when we moved to Canada. And I remember this teacher telling us it was the month of Ramadan was close. And she was like, remember, girls, that when you are not fasting during the month, don't show your brothers and your fathers that. Like, fast in front of them and go eat in your room. And I was thinking, this was me at 13 years old, and I'm thinking, why? What did I do? Like, I didn't do anything wrong. And it was in my head that I shouldn't. But I didn't do anything wrong. Why am I hiding? Like, I'm allowed to not pray, and I'm allowed to eat. Like, I am on my period. And yet we had to hide it. And see, that's the thing. Like, that's a way of upbringing and teaching someone. It's like, no, you should know better. That if my God and my prophet, my religion, actually allows me to relax, not pray, not fast, and just, enjoy a relaxing 3 to 7 days to myself, to be okay, and my body needs to just like reboot, then who are you to tell me not to do that? Like, it's not fair. And I think that is a way that we need to educate people now, especially our daughters. Like, don't hide it. It's not, you didn't do anything wrong.
You didn't do anything wrong. And I think we need to remove the shame out of it. You didn't do anything wrong. And we also need to stop centering the way men feel about periods, because no offense, unless you're getting a period, no uterus, no opinion. We don't care. So centering like, oh, don't eat in front of a man because it's going to make him hungry, or it's going to make him jealous, or it's going to have him ask questions. First of all, if he asks questions, great, we can have a direct conversation.
Correct.
And if we're going to center their feelings, like, we have to stop centering male feelings over the experience, the literal lived experience of women. I think that drives me insane, because a little 10-year-old girl, because girls get their periods as young as 9, or as old as like 15, 16. So for a girl to be like, hey, I don't understand. Why do I have to hide in my room when I'm able to eat? Why do I have to hide from my brother? Why do I have to hide from my father? You can understand how that can create just a culture of secrecy, of lack of openness. And then it's just a downhill slope for, in my opinion, versus if you're open. And now I'm seeing so many young girls being like, nope, I can't, I'm on my period. Or even today, I was at a school earlier, and a girl walked out. She was in junior high, and the teacher was like, where are you going? She said, I'm on my period, I need to change my pad. And it was so loud in front of everybody. So I'm like, good for her, because like, just like you would say, hey, I need to go pee, or hey, I need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Like, a period might take longer for maintenance, for cleanup, for whatever it is. And I think we just need to like, again, we need to be like, why is this making who is it making uncomfortable, and why is it making them uncomfortable?
Right. You work with refugee children. How do you approach conversations around puberty and periods?
Honestly, we haven't had too many conversations, and maybe that's part of it as well, is culturally, like, I wouldn't be the proper person to have a conversation with them, or maybe their families would feel like I'm overstepping, understandably. So we haven't. But when girls do talk to us, and actually I did have a dad, a refugee dad, who was very advocating for his daughters, because his daughters missed a few days of school, like quite a significant amount of school, because their periods. And the dad was very vocal about like, hey, listen, they have their periods, their flow is really heavy, they're not able to get out of bed. But the way he knew about flows and everything, I'm like, this is a proper dad. And his kids were like 11 and 12. And for him to advocate, and he wasn't talking, and he even said, there's no shame. He said, there's no shame, there's no stigma in this. I'm just trying to explain to you why my daughters are not at school. But I'm like, it's so important for these little girls will grow up to not be like, no, don't call my dad, I'm in trouble. They'll be like, I'm in trouble, let me call my dad. So I think it creates an environment of like, hey, he's going to be my protector. And same with mom as well. I just had never heard an immigrant dad being so vocal and so loud and proud, being like, no, my kids are going to miss school. They're not able, like, their cramps are beating the crap out of them. No, and if you can't understand that as a woman, he was talking to another female staff member. He said, if you can't understand that as a woman, then like, that's a little bizarre. And I'm like, honestly, good on you, dad, because I wish we had more dads like that. The only dad that I had was a very open liberal dad, but like I said, all my other friends grew up with same situation, very shy. Even if it wasn't from the dad themselves, it was the mom created a culture, or the kids themselves were like, no, not in front of the dad, don't say that in front of your dad or your brother. And again, what and who are we protecting our dad and our brothers from? Like, it made no sense to me.
Also, we raise our daughters that way, and that we expect them to actually be this open when they're married.
Yes.
Get you, those girls are virgins. They're not allowed to talk about sex. They're not allowed to talk about periods. But then we expect them to be this very open about sex and periods when they're married to a man they have never, ever touched before. And it's like, how do I tell this man that I'm on my period? Like, how do I do that?
And was that man raised in a household that was open? Does he know about periods? Is this going to be his first encounter with a period? Because that's also another situation. Like, that's the reason why I'm telling my son is I don't want his first interaction with a period to be his girlfriend or his wife. Like, I want him to know, to be familiar. Again, you don't need to know the ins and outs, but to be familiar, to understand it's a bodily function. It literally exists so that we can create human beings. So again, to me, it doesn't make sense why it's taboo when it's a one of the reasons why we exist here on this earth.
I may sound a little funny, but I'm actually very thankful for these like small TikTok videos and Instagram reels of how to act around your girlfriend when she's on her period or when it's her time of month. And they bring this bag of like chips and chocolate, and she's like covered in a blanket. Thank you, yes. Period baskets should actually be a thing.
No, honestly.
No, seriously. Like, they need to be a thing. And please, Please make them exist, make them viral. Okay, I want one of those.
Honestly, they're trending because people are realizing, like, hey, I want kindness. I don't want to be alone. Like this whole
Right.
idea, like, oh my god, my girlfriend or my wife is such a like she's acting crazy. I need to leave the house. Now it's changing where people are like, hey, my girlfriend has been like in the bathroom for a while or on the couch or in bed. She hasn't been able
Right.
to get out. I'm gonna get her favorite snacks.
Right.
Because also we need additional calories. Like there's a whole bunch of like medical and physical things that come to it. And if we're just gonna ignore it just because the dude is uncomfortable listening to it, it's like nobody asked the dude's opinion anyway.
If you could give your younger self advice about periods or younger girls today, what would it be?
I wish I was more bolder about it and more advocating for myself because sometimes at the expense of myself I wouldn't want to make other people uncomfortable, even though like I said I grew up liberal, but I also went to an Islamic school. I had Arab Muslim friends, so these people I was informed to hide if I'm not fasting or if to hide if I'm not praying. And I wish I carried the idea that no, I don't care. I'm going to be authentically myself and loud and proud. And just like I see these young girls being like, nope, I'm on my period. I wish I was just as bold. I was not as bold when I was younger. I would also hide my pads. It was still embarrassing, even though I grew up pretty open. It was still embarrassing. You didn't want to advertise that you had your period. And also, even the wrinkling of the packages when you open it, it's like, what am I opening a bag of chips in here?
Yeah.
Like, I wish they were a little bit more discreet, but I just wish these little things didn't shame me too much in that. But it's society's work, right? They succeeded in making sure that little girls, or at least our generation, felt like did this quietly.
You make an excellent point that actually gets me to my next question. What is the one thing that we need society to do and not do when it comes to menstruation?
That's a good question. Um, I wish there was more education on it and not just in like sex ed class.
Yeah.
I think more detailed information about even the differences, pads, tampons, what the different methods are. If someone wants to stop their period or remedy their period, like just whatever options there are. I wish there was just more in depth conversations that included boys as well. Like, we can't just have the girls being educated about this. We need boys as allies, we need men as allies to advocate as well, and we need them to be informed just because these men will eventually become husbands and partners, or they'll have women in their lives. So I wish that there was more education about it. And one thing I wish they would stop doing, I think this is already stopping, but okay, in commercials, they have the liquid blue. And that drives me insane. Okay, it never made sense to me. And again, it goes back to why is it blue? It's blue because you don't want it to be. We have red dye. We can make it red,
Right.
but you don't want to mimic blood. You don't want to gross people out. And who are we grossing out? Almost every woman gets a period. So who are we grossing out? Again, we're going back to protecting male feelings, just how males feel. We're trying to protect them. And I get maybe you could say it's like graphic or just like you wouldn't show any other kind of feces on there. I understand, but at the same time the blue kind of disconnects the period so much. When you're not like you're selling pads, do it properly.
Correct.
You could do the red. So I think that's little, but I don't know, I feel like it would make a major change.
No, I completely agree with you. I also want to point out that only now recently that institutions and high schools now have machines for pads in bathrooms.
Yes.
And this only actually became available when the homosexual community raised voices about it. But then at the same time, which members of the homosexual community, like, we're still talking about, like, it is a man's needs that actually brought pads and tampons to be available in these bathrooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've always needed these, let alone the prices and the finances it takes. Like, it's expensive.
Yeah.
People don't understand how expensive it is to actually go get pads. And there is such thing called period poverty. People need to really address that. And I think for me personally, that's the biggest one I want society to work towards. Period poverty. It is a thing. I am not kidding. If you are donating something, please donate pads to your local food banks, to your local donation centers, and to the charities. Like, these things exist because there are women who can't afford them. They are not cheap. Like, it is not something that is accessible for everyone, and not every woman can go get it. And yes, there are different kinds of pads. Not everyone uses the same one. And all of these are taboo subjects. There's nothing to talk about. And it's like, like, I remember a man actually one time having a conversation with me. He's like, I didn't understand the commercial of Always with wings. He's like, why the hell do you need wings to fly? And I'm like, oh my God, why are pads flying? And like, you're a grown he literally used it. He's like, you're a grown woman, why do you need diapers? And I'm like, The lack of education is just honestly unreal, and it's unbearable.
There was a joke going around because you know how there's different flows, so light, heavy, medium flow, and then so women were joking with their partners, telling them to get pads, and then being like, okay, but there's different. What size is your vagina? So like them not even understanding that it's medium, it's not vagina size, it's flow size, and so what does flow mean? So all of these little things, and going just back to your point of like how expensive pads are. Absolutely, they are expensive, but I feel like every girl has had an experience of being in a public bathroom with someone next to her in the stall and realizing she had her period and be like, excuse me, do you have a pad? And I have never had a girl decline. Be like, yes, of course. Every single girl. So as much as pads are so expensive and tampons are so expensive, you can stop any girl on the street and be like, I'm so sorry, I just got my period. Do you have? And they're like, of course, right away. So I feel like that's a beautiful thing of girlhood.
Yeah.
That no matter how expensive they are, no girl's ever going to be like, oh, yeah, but can you like send me the bill for the $4 pad or something?
Yeah.
Like they'll just be like, of course. Or do you need help? Or anything to support another girl.
Or actually be on the street and like, let's say you got your period and it's showing on your pants.
Yes.
Guys avoid it, even though they know what it is. They come and say, by the way. But girls are so sweet. Like I actually saw with my own eyes where a girl took off her shirt and put it around the waist of another girl on the street. This was actually in Banff town. And I was so happy. I actually was like this close to going up and hugging her. And I'm like, thank you.
Because that's womanhood.
It is. And I think that periods actually, like, for some reason, they connect us as women. And they make us actually stronger together.
Yeah.
We support each other through it. I know sometimes there's like this cliche that goes around like, women support other women. But when it comes to periods, women support other women.
Yes. Women got each other's backs.
Yes.
And we need the men to join as well because it's not just a women's issue. That's what we're saying. Is it affects everybody, whether you get a period or not. It affects everybody.
Yes. I absolutely agree with you. Nadia, thank you so much for being my guest today. I had so much fun having this conversation with you. I appreciate your time here. If this episode made you laugh, cringe, or cry, good. That's the point. Remember, your body isn't shameful and your period isn't dirty. Your voice, it absolutely matters. Thank you for joining us today on Feminist Philosophy Podcast, and until next time.